What if humans could teleport instantly? It begins with a mistake, not a global announcement, not a visible change in the sky, just a moment where something happens that should not be possible. You are standing in your room, thinking about leaving, about going somewhere simple, somewhere familiar. Maybe the kitchen, maybe outside. The thought is not important. What matters is what follows. You think about the place. Clearly, you imagine it for a second, and then you are there. No movement, no transition, no sense of travel. One moment you are in one place, the next, you are somewhere else. Your body freezes, trying to process what just happened. Your mind searches for an explanation, something that can fit this into reality, something that makes sense. But nothing does, because there was no time, no distance, no process, just change. You turn around quickly, expecting to see the path you took, the door you opened, the space you crossed. There is nothing, only the place you are now, and the memory of where you were. You try it again, carefully, this time with intention. You focus on your room. You picture it exactly, the position of objects, the light, the space, and then it happens again. Instantly, you are back. Your heart begins to race, not from fear, but from realization. Because this is not random, this is control. Across the world, the same moment unfolds. People begin to experience sudden shifts in location, small at first, accidental, barely noticeable. Someone appears in a different room. Someone else moves across a building without walking. At first, it is dismissed as confusion, as memory error, as a moment of disorientation. But it happens again, and again, and again, until the pattern becomes undeniable. It is not movement, it is teleportation. Within hours, people begin to test it. Some cautiously, some without hesitation. You think of a place, and you are there, no matter the distance, no matter the barrier, no matter the rules that once defined space. Distance becomes irrelevant, completely. The first reactions are filled with shock, then excitement, then something else. Freedom, because for the first time in human history, location no longer limits you. You do not need transportation. You do not need time. You do not need to plan. You can be anywhere, at any moment, and that changes everything. At first, people use it for simple things. Convenience. They move between rooms, between buildings, between places they know. They test the limits, learning how precise their thoughts need to be, how clearly they must imagine a location for the teleportation to work. Clarity becomes important, because if the image is unclear, the result is unpredictable. At the same time, something deeper begins to happen. Cities begin to change, not physically, but functionally, because transportation disappears overnight. Cars are abandoned. Public transport becomes unnecessary. Airports lose their purpose, because no one needs them anymore. Why travel for hours when you can arrive instantly? At the same time, borders lose meaning. Not politically, but physically. You can stand in one country and in the next moment be somewhere else entirely. No checkpoints, no control, no way to stop it, because teleportation cannot be blocked. It does not follow paths. It does not follow systems. It exists outside of them, and that creates a new kind of reality. One where location is no longer a barrier, but access. First, this feels like a breakthrough. A world without distance. A world without delay. A world where everything is immediately available. But the first problems appear faster than expected, because access means everyone can go anywhere. Not just you, everyone. At the same time, people begin to appear in places they should not be. Private spaces, restricted areas, secure locations. Suddenly, privacy becomes fragile, because walls no longer matter, doors no longer matter, locks no longer matter. If someone can think of a place, They can be there, and that realization changes how people feel about space. Home is no longer protected, not completely, because at any moment, someone could appear, uninvited, unseen, unstoppable. At the same time, something deeper begins to shift. Value. Location used to define importance. Where you were mattered, where you could go mattered. Now, that distinction is gone. Every place is equally accessible, and that changes how people see the world. Tourist destinations lose exclusivity. Rare locations lose rarity, because nothing is difficult to reach anymore. Everything becomes immediate, available, and in that availability, something is lost. Anticipation, the journey, the experience of moving from one place to another, because now there is no journey, only arrival. At the same time, something unexpected begins to emerge. Overload, not physical, but mental, because having access to everything creates pressure. Where do you go when you can go anywhere? What do you choose when nothing limits you? People begin to move constantly, not because they need to, but because they can. They jump between places, between environments, between experiences, trying to find something that feels meaningful in a world where everything is equally close. But the more they move, the less each place feels significant, because nothing requires effort, nothing requires time, and without those things, experiences begin to blur. At the same time, something else begins to happen. Mistakes. Small at first. A person thinks of a place incorrectly. A detail is wrong. The image is incomplete. And when they teleport, they arrive somewhere unexpected. Close, but not exact. And that creates risk, because teleportation depends on thought. And thought is not always perfect. As the first day comes to an end, as people begin to understand what they have gained, one realization becomes impossible to ignore. This is not just movement. It is power. The power to ignore distance, to ignore barriers, to ignore limits that once defined the world. But with that power comes something else, responsibility. Because when you can go anywhere, the question is no longer where you are allowed to be. It becomes where you choose to go. And that choice will define everything. It does not take long for the world to realize that teleportation is not just a new way to move. It is a new way to exist. At first, people believe the biggest change is distance disappearing, that travel is gone, that time between places no longer matters, that everything has become immediate and accessible. But distance was never just about movement. It was about separation. And now that separation is gone. Within days, the structure of space begins to collapse in ways no one expected. Cities lose their purpose, not physically, but functionally. Living in one place no longer means anything when you can be anywhere at any time. People stop thinking in terms of location. They begin to think in terms of presence. Where do you want to be right now? That is the only question that matters. At the same time, something deeper begins to change. Security disappears. Not gradually, completely. There is no such thing as a protected space anymore. Not truly. Governments try to adapt, building systems, creating zones, attempting to restrict access, but all of it fails in the same way. Because teleportation does not follow rules. It follows thought, and thought cannot be controlled. People begin to realize that privacy, as they understood it, no longer exists. Homes, offices, private areas all become vulnerable, not because they are weak, but because there is no longer a barrier that can stop someone from appearing inside them. At first, this creates fear. People hesitate to stay in one place for too long. They move unpredictably, trying to avoid being found, trying to maintain some form of control over their environment. But that control is an illusion, because anyone can arrive, at any moment, without warning. At the same time, something unexpected begins to happen. People stop going everywhere, not because they cannot, but because they no longer want to. At first, the ability to teleport creates excitement. People explore the world instantly, jumping between cities, countries, continents, experiencing places that were once distant and difficult to reach. But over time, that excitement fades, because experience without effort feels different, less earned, less meaningful. Standing on a mountain feels less significant when you did not climb it. Seeing the ocean feels less powerful when you did not travel to reach it. Moments lose their weight, because weight was created by the journey, and now the journey is gone. At the same time, something deeper begins to affect the mind. Orientation. People begin to lose their sense of place, not physically but mentally. The concept of being somewhere becomes unstable. You are no longer connected to a location through time, through movement, through experience. You simply appear, and that creates a disconnect, because the brain was never designed to exist without transition, without movement, without the process of arriving. People begin to feel disoriented, not in a physical way, but in a deeper sense, as if they are not fully anchored to any place. Because they are not. At the same time, something else begins to emerge. Mistakes become more dangerous. First, they are small. A person thinks of the wrong room, the wrong street, the wrong place, and they appear somewhere unexpected. But then the mistakes grow, because thought is not always precise. People imagine places imperfectly. They mix details. They remember incorrectly. And when teleportation depends on thought, imprecision becomes risk. Someone tries to teleport to a location they have never seen clearly, and they arrive somewhere incomplete, not fully there, not fully safe, and that creates a new kind of fear, because teleportation is not guided. It is interpreted, and interpretation can fail. At the same time, something even more unsettling begins to happen. Collisions, not physical in the way people expect, but spatial. Two people think of the same place, at the same time, and they arrive together, in the exact same space, at the exact same moment. First, it is rare, almost impossible, but as more people teleport more often, it begins to happen more frequently, and each time it creates instability, because space was never meant to handle overlapping existence. Reality begins to react, not visibly, but structurally. Small distortions appear, moments where space feels slightly wrong, as if something is adjusting, correcting, trying to maintain consistency in a system that is no longer stable. At the same time, something deeper begins to change in how people live. They begin to limit themselves, not because they are forced to, but because they understand the consequences. They choose specific places, familiar places, safe places. They avoid constant movement, not because they cannot move, but because movement has lost its meaning. And in that limitation, something returns. Stability, not imposed, but chosen. At the same time, society begins to rebuild around new principles. Not location, not distance, but intention. Where you go becomes a reflection of what you want, not what you can reach. And that changes behavior. People begin to move less, but more deliberately, more carefully, because every movement matters, even if it is instant. As months pass, the world settles into something new. Not a world without distance, but a world where distance exists only as a concept, a memory of something that once shaped experience. And in that new world, a final realization begins to form. Teleportation did not just remove distance, it removed resistance, the effort required to reach something, the time required to understand it, the process that gave value to arrival. And without resistance, everything becomes easier, but also less meaningful, because meaning was never just in the destination, it was in the path. And now, there is no path, only choice. And when everything is equally accessible, the only thing that defines your experience is what you decide to value, because the world is no longer divided by where you can go. It is defined by where you choose to stay.